So Ruth does radio interviews. She interviewed Alice and me last night.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
You need to send us a copy for
I will.
stuff. This is what you're trying to get more stuff for the newsletter.
I don't know how it
Thank you
sounded
for
to
giving
but it
Gabe.
seemed all right to me. I thought it was a great little conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to me, it felt like the beginning too. There were so many more things I wanted to ask and pursue.
It was very exciting, all that.
Good.
It was just a beautiful dialogue.
I enjoyed it too. It's nice.
Okay.
Okay,
We're all good.
So, first thing is to introduce yourself, and it's good to just pretend you're talking to me.
Good. I'm Ruth Yellowhawk, and I'm really pleased to be here at the Learning Connection today. Thank you for having me.
One of the things you've written about is creativity and a path to healing. Can you talk about creativity and healing?
Yeah. When I think about creativity and healing our spirits, I really see them as interconnected. I think that when we're able to fully live up to all of our creative potential, that we just naturally become whole. We become whole human beings again, and we recognize our place in the world. And as I get older, more and more every day I realize this more. A lot of people are hurting. And I'd say a lot, not just American Indian people, not any one group of people, but gosh, the whole planet is hurting. You know, and our relatives, whether they're four-legged or two-legged, or whether they're swimming or flying, you know, buzzing around this earth, are a little bit disoriented, I think, right now, to their natural place. You know, and so when we have a chance to really not only exhibit our creativity, but even experience another person's creativity, it just naturally has the potential to heal our spirit, heal our place.
How are you affected by the present day American culture, or maybe it's Western culture, not necessarily American?
It affects every moment of my life. It takes a while to just catch your breath. I think that's a big part of it for me, is Western culture is like this big engine, this big machine that's going so fast. You see it now in China and Asia. You know, you just see this great production line, this great production of, I don't know, the clock ticking and, you know, time marching on, and people get sucked into this whirling vortex of busyness. And it's hard to know how to dance with that, how to step outside of it and be calm. And I think that for us as human beings, we weren't meant to be so jangly, you know, we weren't meant to be so rushed. Whether we were plowing a field or fishing or whatever it was that our ancestors did, I think they did it with real purpose. It might have been difficult, it might have been hard, but they did it with purpose and commitment and with songs, you know, and with a way of living that was meaningful. So Western culture to me is really about this busyness, doing things on a kind of a tight-paced schedule sometimes. It's nice just to relax and have a conversation with someone. It's something that I really treasure and value, and I think about a lot. It's a big question. It's a really big question to ask and to try to answer, because there's so many beautiful things about Western culture that I could, try to expound upon and sound, like I had a good brain about. There's some beautiful things about Western culture, but the way it affects me today is that I just find myself wanting to step outside of busyness and to just be very present to other people and to the natural world especially, so that I can learn.
One of the things you said at Porirua was that you go where you're invited and you didn't have a big planned schedule. So how do you operate on just going where you're invited?
Well, just a few moments ago, I received 3 invitations, and they're all for tomorrow. And they kind of conflicted in a way. It does seem that once you've been invited one place, we've been invited here to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and once you're invited one place, and as soon as you open up yourself to another person, then another invitation ensues. And you just sort out what that invitation means and choose to accept it. When you receive a couple of invitations at once, maybe that's why I was feeling jangly when I talk about Western culture. Honestly, I think that's probably why, because I had to stop and breathe and think. Even though I want to say yes, it's such a beautiful thing to say yes to an invitation, I had to think about my son being able to have a day to himself. I had to think about what's best for my family's spirit, what's best for mine, and what's a good way to honor that invitation so that the person who's issuing the invitation also feels honored and heard and respected. It's really important to me. So we had a conversation, and now that calmed me down, because I was able to reorganize the schedule in a way that's good for everybody, and I don't have to do everything tomorrow. It's strange because while we are purposefully going where we're invited and focusing on relationship, it doesn't mean that everyone else is. And so, I don't know how to say this, except it's been a calming trip, because when we just share that with people, it seems like it then frees them up to just consider what it is they're inviting in. But I love the idea of living by relationship, and it's easier said than done.
You mentioned that you were keen to join the dancing. Is that, I mean, how do you envisage that happening?
It already has. For myself, on my father's side, I'm Wyandot. I'm from a woodlands tribe. And earlier this morning, we were having a conversation about language and recovering original meanings. A lot of tribes are doing that. So for my tribe, we're now going back to an original name, which is Wendat, which means we're the people of the island. We come from Canada, what people know as Canada originally, and really from a peninsula. It wasn't even an island, but that's all right, because it can also refer to Turtle Island, which is linked to our creation story. So my father is Wyandot, and we think a bit Welsh. My mother's German American, first generation. And I grew up on a farm, in a large Catholic family, a bustling family, growing up knowing that we were native and having no clue what that meant truly as a concept. We just knew that we were native, and most people thought we were Italian because we were a little bit darker and had a big Catholic family. So for me, my identity as a Wendat woman has always been important to me, to really sort out what that means. The German side's pretty easy. I can be kind of organized, and I know how to make sauerkraut. My mom taught me that. But for my dad, I received the more challenging effects of colonization. The Jesuits got to our tribe early. The evangelical work that was done was by force rather than choice or invitation, and it created some pretty devastating effects on my family. So for my father to name me after his mother when I was the 9th child meant a lot to me. He saw something in me early that he wanted me to carry, and I was happy to pick that up and carry it with me. And so I began that early, I guess you would call it a quest, to know who I was as a Wendat woman. But I never felt comfortable with the idea of dancing because it's not in my feet the way it is in Jim's. He grew up with what they call the wachipi, the powwow tradition, although his parents didn't let him dance either when he was young. He was held back. So I've seen this resurgence of pride, identity, sense of self, as he's begun dancing, as Gabriel's been dancing, but I've always been the backup woman. And I'm just ready to dance. I've got another woman who's from a woodlands tribe who's out in South Dakota who has been helping me with my regalia. I have a Wendat brother in Oklahoma who's back home on the reservation there where I didn't grow up, nor did he, but that's where he is now. And he's helping me begin to learn the songs and the language. So I guess I'm just not content to be on the sidelines anymore. So that's how I'll attend to that, is by physically going to attend the social dances in Oklahoma, where many of us are finding our way back home, and figuring out how I can do my social dances in the context of living in Lakota territory, which other women have discovered how to do. Because I'm not a Lakota woman, nor do I want to be. But I want to be able to dance to the drums, and most of those guys are Northern Plains, and we're not. Thank you for asking that.
Just by the way, was your mother blue-eyed?
Her eyes were light, and she was very deeply blonde and fair skin. She had that beautiful, long, blonde German hair that they braided up and swirled on the top of her head. But I always thought she had blue eyes, and then recently I was looking at pictures of her and they look brown. So, and you know, Pops of course were brown. Yeah.
Just an aside really, you must spend a lot of time on the road.
Yeah.
What's that like?
It's fun. It's, you know, the road has its challenges, but my goodness, it's the most interesting thing in the world, you know, to be on the road. I love traveling. South Dakota, where we live and have made our home, is a very isolated environment. There are 9 reservations in the vicinity there, in south, bordering North Dakota, bordering Canada. And the people live very far from resources. I think there's about maybe 760,000 people in the whole state, and the state's one of those huge states that's probably 3 times the size of New Zealand. So people are flung far. I can drive all day and see 10 cars. Probably a lot like rural New Zealand, maybe some rural pockets. Like maybe. I haven't seen much of real deeply rural New Zealand. But yeah, it's not real populated. So I like traveling and seeing what else is out there. And I like people. Yeah.
Anything else you want to?
No, I don't think so. I suppose maybe we could get you to sort of reiterate what you're doing in New Zealand and where you're staying and how long you'll be here.
Actually, that is an important link because you're with
My brother.
your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, just sort of some details.
Do you mind if I share one more thing too about the art of healing? Because it's really important to me, if it's all right. When you ask me about art and healing, or well, you didn't ask about art and healing, but art and creativity. and I took it there, and how I see where the healing is linked to creativity. One of the things that Jim has been doing with his art for a while is visiting challenging issues. The boarding schools, which have been very challenging for Indigenous people across the world, whether Aborigines in Australia, whether even, some Celtic people in Ireland have had horrific experiences in boarding schools, but especially First Nations people have had hard times, when children were basically taken from their parents, hair lopped off, scrubbed for lice, forbidden to speak languages, belief system turned around. And then I think the motto of many of the schools was to kill the Indian and save the child. So he did a painting on the boarding school theme. And I could see in myself when he showed the painting, just people would just open up their stories. Something was happening, the painting was offering healing. And so we started experimenting with using the painting with audio of Indigenous people sharing their stories, with film clips, and then doing talking circle, native processes to talk. And it really has reinforced for me how deeply art has the power to heal when we allow it to. He's done pieces that show, there's a painting he did of a person just clutching Mother Earth, the red earth deep in the hands. He shot the earth through the air compressor, and so it has this beautiful texture to it as well. But it's a very powerful painting he's done. And I remember showing it at some huge conference on race and ethnicity and American higher ed, something like that. And people were really moved by this painting. And I'd asked them to reflect on the value of land and where they were from. And I asked them to reflect on the land on which their institutions were built, their institutions of higher education, and to see what connections they could make with their own history, that land, and their purpose, their mission. And it was just a beautifully rich conversation. So I really wanted to just share that, how deep those experiences have been and how honored I've been to be a part of them. This trip to New Zealand is really important. My brother lives here. He's lived here 20 years. He has made this his home. He'll never move back to the States, although he holds dual citizenship. And he and I are very close. We're about a year apart. And we just get each other. We understand each other. We always have. But he doesn't have family here. So it's really important for me to be present for him here and to just be able to bear witness to his life, to let him know that his life here matters to family. I know he knows it matters to the people here, but it's equally important that he knows it matters to family. And I really want my son to have the benefit of being deeply uncled by this marvelous man who is my brother. And for my brother to be mentored by this wonderful young man who's my son. I just think they have something together that's special. So we're here visiting, we're here to share culture, we're here to share whatever gifts that, we have been given in our lives with those who want to see them, I guess. That's pretty much it. And it's been a real beautiful journey.
Yeah, that's wonderful.